Forget everything you think you know about Vikings. While Hollywood portrays them as mere raiders with crude weapons and boats, the reality would shock even modern engineers. These barbarians created technologies so advanced that scientists are still trying to fully understand them today. Some of their inventions were so ahead of their time that we didn't match their sophistication until centuries later, and a few still leave us scratching our heads. What you're about to discover isn't just a list of ancient tools. It's a window into a civilization whose technological achievements were so advanced that some of them remained unsurpassed until the Industrial Revolution. Prepare to have your perception of the Dark Ages completely transformed. Imagine trying to navigate across the world's most treacherous seas without a compass, GPS, or even a basic map. Now imagine doing it with such precision that you could reliably find a small island hundreds of miles away. This wasn't just a Viking achievement, it was their regular commute. At the heart of Viking navigation was one of history's most mysterious devices, the sunstone. Long dismissed as a myth, this crystalline compass was recently proven to work with shocking accuracy. Scientists testing Iceland spar, the likely stone used by Vikings, discovered it could determine the sun's position within 1 degree of accuracy, even in cloudy conditions or twilight. To put that in perspective, that's about the same margin of error as a modern handheld compass. But the sunstone was just one piece of their navigation puzzle. Vikings developed a sophisticated suite of tools and techniques that would make modern sailors envious. Their sun compass, a wooden disc with a central gnomon, could track their course with remarkable precision. Recent reconstructions show that on a clear day, this device could maintain a course accurate to within 1 degree over vast distances. That's comparable to using a basic GPS unit. Perhaps most impressively, Vikings mastered the art of reading nature itself. They developed techniques to navigate using everything from whale migration patterns to cloud formations. One technique involved observing the flight patterns of seabirds to determine distance from land, a method so reliable that World War II pilots were taught to use it for emergency navigation. Using astronomical cues and natural signs, this fail-safe navigation system ensured reliability, what modern experts call multimodal navigation. If one method failed, backups kept Vikings on course, making their wayfinding both sophisticated and resilient. Think modern steel is impressive? Viking blacksmiths were creating metal alloys so sophisticated that it took until the 1990s for scientists to finally understand how they did it. The most famous example was the legendary Ulfbert swords. Weapons so advanced they were literally centuries ahead of their time. Far from just sharp pieces of metal, Ulfbert swords were a technological marvel. Modern analysis reveals they were forged from crucible steel with an astonishingly low level of impurities, something seemingly impossible for medieval technology. Their high carbon content surpassed anything in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. So advanced was the steel that if handed to a modern metallurgist without context, they might assume it came from a contemporary forge. Interestingly, Viking blacksmiths weren't just working with high-quality metal. They were pioneering entirely new forging techniques. They mastered pattern welding, a method similar to Damascus steel, which combined hardness with flexibility, allowing blades to stay sharp while absorbing impact. This wasn't decorative, it was an engineering breakthrough. Modern experiments show their furnaces reached over 2,732 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,500 degrees Celsius, hot enough to fully liquefy iron. They developed advanced carbon infusion methods and impurity removal techniques that produced steel unmatched in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. Even more impressive, they achieved all this without understanding molecular chemistry, just centuries of careful observation. Recent studies reveal they tailored alloys for specific uses. Woodworking axes had different steel compositions than weapons, and boat-building tools had yet another formula. This wasn't just craftsmanship. It was precision engineering far ahead of its time. And if you think Viking weapons were just crude pieces of metal, modern experts would disagree. Recent analysis of Viking warfare technology has revealed engineering sophistication that wouldn't look out of place in a modern military R&D lab. Their weapons weren't just tools of war. They were masterpieces of applied physics and ergonomic design. Let's start with the legendary Ulfbert sword, which we touched on earlier. But it wasn't just the metal that was special. It was the entire design. The sword's balance point was so precisely engineered that modern replicas require computer assistance to achieve the same perfection. Each Ulfbert was essentially a medieval precision instrument, with weight distribution so perfect that it felt like an extension of the warrior's arm. Modern tests show these swords could bend nearly 90 degrees and spring back to true, a flexibility that modern steel would struggle to match. Viking shields were equally groundbreaking. Far from being clunky slabs of wood, they were engineered for both agility and protection. The center grip system they developed was so effective that it remained basically unchanged until the end of shield warfare. Their tapered grip distributed impact force along the arm instead of concentrating it at the wrist. The rim reinforcement technique allowed for lighter shield construction without sacrificing strength, while their innovative boss design could deflect blade strikes while protecting the hand. The Viking axe represents perhaps their greatest weapon innovation. Modern analysis has revealed that these weren't just sharpened wedges, they were precision-engineered cutting tools. The weight distribution was so precisely calculated that it maximized striking power while minimizing user fatigue. Recent physics analysis shows their axe design achieved nearly perfect energy transfer from swing to impact, something modern axe makers still strive for. But for versatility, nothing matched the spear, a true multi-role weapon platform. Designed for both ranged and melee combat, they could be thrown with deadly accuracy, wielded in close combat, used as walking sticks on long marches, and even served as measuring tools for boat building. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed something even more surprising: standardization. Viking weapons weren't just well crafted, they were produced to consistent specifications across regions, a level of uniformity Europe wouldn't see again until the early modern period. Viking blacksmiths achieved precision that would impress modern engineers with what we'd consider primitive tools, pushing the boundaries of metallurgy and manufacturing centuries ahead of their time. When modern naval architects studied Viking ship designs, they didn't find primitive boats. They found masterpieces of marine engineering that incorporated principles we didn't fully understand until the 20th century. These weren't just boats, they were the Formula One cars of the medieval seas, combining speed, durability, and innovation in ways that wouldn't be matched for centuries. The most revolutionary aspect was their hull design. While the rest of Europe was building ships with rigid hulls, Vikings created what engineers now call a flexible hull system. Think of it like a modern suspension system for water. The hull could actually flex with the waves, making their ships both faster and more seaworthy. Modern tests have shown that this design reduced water resistance by up to 30% compared to contemporary ships and enabling speeds up to 15 knots. Their clinker-built construction, using overlapping planks and iron rivets, made them lighter, stronger, and easier to repair. Viking sails were just as advanced. While other European ships were using simple square sails, Vikings developed a sophisticated system that could harness the wind from almost any angle. Their woven rectangular sails adapted to wind pressure, achieving 85% of modern sailcloth efficiency. The steering system was equally ingenious, a side-mounted steering oar offering superior maneuverability and reduced drag, even allowing ships to sail backward. And instead of a fixed rudder, Vikings used a side-mounted steering oar that combined the functions of a rudder and a stabilizer. Modern marine engineers have discovered this system provided better maneuverability in rough seas while reducing drag compared to fixed rudders. The design allowed them to navigate in extremely shallow water and even sail their ships backward when needed, a capability that would be impressive even by today's standards. What's most impressive is how all these innovations work together. Each element, the flexible hull, the advanced sail, the sophisticated steering system, complemented the others, creating vessels that were greater than the sum of their parts. Long before urban planning was a profession, Vikings were creating settlements with sophisticated infrastructure that would make modern civil engineers nod in approval. These weren't just random collections of buildings. They were carefully planned communities designed to thrive in the harshest conditions imaginable. The most impressive aspect of Viking settlements wasn't just their buildings, it was their infrastructure. While medieval European cities drowned in their own waste, Viking towns featured advanced water management systems. Pitched streets naturally channeled rainwater away from buildings, while stone-lined drainage channels prevented erosion. Their filtration systems, using layers of rock and gravel, turned rainfall into a usable resource rather than a nuisance. Archaeologists have uncovered something even more shocking: grid patterns. While most medieval cities were chaotic mazes, Viking settlements often followed carefully planned layouts. These designs maximized natural light, optimized traffic flow, and even incorporated protection against prevailing winds, all while allowing for future expansion. concepts centuries ahead of their time. Their building foundations were equally innovative. Vikings used a technique called floating foundations, layering stones, gravel, and wood to create structures that could withstand shifting, frozen ground. Flexible joints allowed for slight movement without compromising stability, a method so effective that modern architects still study it. But Viking settlements weren't just practical. They were designed for community life. Carefully designated public spaces hosted markets, legal gatherings, and trade, recognizing that a thriving society needed more than just homes. Even more astonishing, evidence suggests urban zoning. Residential areas were separate from craft workshops, reducing fire risk and improving city organization. If you're picturing Vikings as grimy, unkempt warriors, archaeological evidence tells a shockingly different story. While the rest of medieval Europe was barely managing a bath per year, Vikings were developing hygiene practices and tools that would look surprisingly familiar on a modern bathroom counter. Their commitment to cleanliness wasn't just about looking good, it was an integral part of their culture that set them apart from their contemporaries. Archaeological digs across Viking settlements have unearthed an array of sophisticated grooming tools that would make a modern stylist jealous. Their combs, intricately carved from bone and antler, weren't just basic tools. They were precision instruments designed to remove even the smallest parasites. Modern microscopic analysis has revealed grooves so finely cut that they could trap and remove lice eggs, something many modern combs struggle to achieve. But it's their bathing culture that truly shatters stereotypes. While medieval Europeans avoided bathing, fearing it caused illness, Vikings built advanced bathing facilities. These weren't just sweat lodges, they were saunas with graduated heating areas and ventilation systems, doubling as social hubs where business was conducted, like modern power lunches, but with steam. The most surprising discovery came from analysis of Viking soap residue. They had developed cleaning agents using a combination of animal fats and wood ash lye that created a product remarkably similar to modern soap. Chemical analysis shows these soaps were sophisticated enough to kill bacteria, something that wouldn't be understood by science for nearly 1,000 years. Their attention to personal appearance went far beyond basic cleanliness. Excavations have uncovered ear picks, nail clippers, and beard trimming tools that wouldn't look out of place in a modern grooming kit. Their tweezers were precise enough to remove splinters, and their razors sharp enough for a clean shave, disproving the myth of the universally shaggy Viking. Next time you zip up your waterproof jacket or pull on your moisture-wicking base layer, spare a thought for the Vikings. While we credit modern science for these innovations, Viking textile makers were developing surprisingly similar solutions over 1,000 years ago. Their fabric technology wasn't just advanced for its time, it solved problems that modern outdoor gear companies are still tackling today. At the heart of Viking textile innovation was wool processing. They didn't just shear sheep and weave fabric, they developed specialized sorting and treatment techniques to create different grades of wool for specific uses. Some were fine enough to resemble modern merino, while others were so dense they repelled water like Gore-Tex. Modern analysis of preserved Viking textiles has revealed weave patterns so complex they require computer assistance to reproduce today. Their waterproofing techniques were just as advanced. Vikings combined wool grease, lanolin, with tree tar to create fabrics that resisted North Sea spray. Recent reconstructions show these treatments were nearly as effective as modern durable water-repellent coatings. But unlike today's waterproofing, Viking treatments could last for years without reapplication. They also mastered layering systems. From lightweight, moisture-wicking base layers to dense, weather-resistant outer garments, Viking clothing wasn't just about warmth. It was a complete system that regulated temperature and moisture, much like modern technical gear. Even their dyeing technology was ahead of its time. They didn't just create basic colors. They developed chemical processes to produce dyes that resisted sun fading, salt water, and repeated washing. Some Viking blues were so color-fast that textile fragments unearthed after 1,000 years still retain their original hue. Modern textile companies would kill for that kind of color retention. The true genius of Viking textile makers wasn't just in their technical skills, it was in their deep understanding of performance clothing. They engineered garments for Arctic winters and Mediterranean summers, designed specialized fabrics for seafaring, and created textiles durable enough for combat. This wasn't just craft, it was engineering with thread and wool. Think about this for a moment. While most of Europe was fumbling in the so-called Dark Ages, Vikings were developing technologies that would make modern engineers pause in admiration. From their sophisticated metal alloys to their revolutionary ship designs, they weren't just surviving, They were innovating at a level that wouldn't be matched for centuries. Speaking of survival, enduring the brutal Nordic winters took more than just warm clothing. It required ingenuity in every aspect of life. Curious how they did it? Check out our deep dive into how Viking peasants survived freezing winters.